Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Unpacking Love. I'm so excited to be doing this episode. As we can see, guys, we're getting so close to episode 100, and I'm just so incredibly blessed to have had so many guests on the podcast and to just have all of you be excited about listening to the podcast. So thank you so much for all your support, for listening, for sharing, and for coming on the podcast and for everything that you do that I see and that I don't see. I really appreciate it. The next few episodes, starting with this one, are going to be the pre-series. So I'm going to start today with premarital health screening. And then the next one is going to be prenups. And then the next one is going to be premarital counseling. I am so pumped for this series, you guys. I really am. And I just hope that, people have a good time and people learn some things from the episodes. So let's start with today's episode. A little bit of a backstory, because the question might be, how did this come up, or why did I even think of doing this episode? So I was talking to one of my friends. She's Middle Eastern. And so she mentioned that a couple that she knew back home was unable to get married because their parents, so the parents of the two people involved, were against them getting married. And that was because they found out just before they got married that both of them were sickle cell carriers. I won't mention the country that she brought up, but she said in a specific country, it's actually illegal for you to get married if you're sickle cell carriers. And so I was like, oh, wow. So then that got me so intrigued. And then you know how it is, right? Like you start somewhere, so I'm like looking up sickle cell anemia. And then the next thing I'm like, oh, wow, there are also other tests that are recommended or that, different medical professionals bring up when it comes to getting married. So on this episode, guys, I'm going to start off by saying I'm not a medical professional at all. And in fact, this is not even a medical episode. This is a love relationship type of episode that I'm basically coming to share what I read in articles. And I'm actually not even going to go to like the medical weeds of all of it all. You guys can look it up if you want to look it up. But I am going to bring up a few tests that I saw a number of articles referencing that are encouraged. And I guess depending on where you are, some of them might actually be mandated by the country or the state that you live in, that you should get those tests done before you get married. So let us get into it. So the first one was HIV and STI testing. And the importance of that one, according to many articles, is just so that you can protect yourself, and also so that if you're going to be going into marriage with hopes of having children someday, you also prevent spreading, some of these things to the kids, right? So for example, like HIV. So if you know ahead of time, you can also take precautions so that things are not spread to the kids. The next one was blood group testing. And something that was very interesting to me was the rhesus incompatibility. And for any people who are listening who are medical people and they're like, that's not how you pronounce it, guys. Like I said, I'm not a medical person. But what was interesting about this was they said that it's important to know, I guess, and also for some of these things, I don't necessarily think it has to be before people get married, but maybe it might be before you have kids or something, if you just want to know these things. But anyway, what they said was that this rhesus factor, also known as the Rh factor, is something that would be important to know, because there's something called Rh positive and then there's something called Rh negative. And so if a mother is Rh positive, it doesn't matter what the father is per se, like there wouldn't be any issues, at least from what I read. However, if the mother is Rh negative and the father is Rh positive, then that could potentially cause issues. And they were saying like the mother's body could create antibodies that basically then fight off the child's blood stuff. So all of that to say, this is a test that was thrown out there to just know if your blood types are, compatible with the Rh stuff. And it's not to say that if someone is Rh negative, if a woman is Rh negative, she can't be with someone who's Rh positive. They were saying that if it is the case, then there's like some, I think, medication or injections that will be taken to like make sure that the antibodies are not created to fight off the baby's blood. So like I said, guys, you can go and you can read on this, because listen, I'm not a medical person. I'm just here to share what I at least saw in some of these articles. But, you can do the scientific research on your own. The next one is genetic or genotypic or genotypic screening. And that's the one that sickle cell screening or sickle cell anemia falls under. So there's some people who are born who have sickle cell, right? And for those people, they just face a lot of difficulties in life. There's a lot of like being in the hospital, like in and out of the hospital multiple times. And it just varies. Some people are in the hospital for stretches of months. Some people are there for years. It's just a lot that they have to go through. And I think that's why it's such a big thing in terms of testing, right? So that people can make more informed decisions before getting married or after they get married. Anyway, so some people are born with sickle cell anemia. Some people are born as carriers. So if you're a carrier, and an example, like I said, you guys can go and read up on this, but an example would be you would be AS, right? And that's a carrier. So if someone is a carrier and then they get married to someone who's also a carrier, then there's a 25% chance that they will produce a baby who's SS, which means that their child would have sickle cell anemia. And then there's a 50% chance that they would have a child who's a carrier. And then there's the 25% chance that they would have a child who is not a carrier and who does not have sickle cell. So the reason why it's very important is because you want to know prior to having children what might end up happening. And from what my friend was saying, in some countries, they actually prohibit certain people getting married or having children because of the fact that you are basically, if you're going to have a child who does have sickle cell anemia, you're basically kind of signing up to have a child who has a very, very difficult life. So it's a very complicated one to talk about. However, that's one of the ones where they were testing would be advised. And in terms of the world, I heard of some countries in Africa where it's prevalent, sickle cell, the being a carrier or whatever. But my friend was also telling me that even in some countries in the Middle East, it's also, common. And then I was also reading up somewhere where it was saying even in the Latino community also it's common. So I don't know where exactly, things fall. However, it's just good to have it tested so that you'll know what might be happening in the future. The next one was a mental health assessment. And I think this one is more to just help you as a couple. If someone has a mental health challenge so that you can know how to handle them in certain times when certain things are happening. And also, even if you're going to have children who end up having mental health issues, that you would know how to handle that. The next one that they mentioned was fertility testing. And they were talking about how it can be done for both the women and the men. So they could do sperm count checks. And then for women, they could also do some other tests to see what the fertility situation looks like. And that's not to say that if certain problems are spotted, that, you're doomed and you wouldn't be able to have children. But what they were saying was if they can test and see things earlier on, then if there's need for treatment or if there's need to go about things a certain way, you could start it earlier on instead of finding out way later on when you're married and you've been trying to have kids and you've been trying to have kids for a long time and it hasn't happened. So that was one where they were oh, if you want to know, you can also just do a fertility test prior to getting married. And then the last one was chronic medical conditions screening. And one of those chronic medical illnesses could be diabetes. It could be things to do with kidneys. It could be stuff to do with your liver. Just those big type of screenings could be done. And when they do that, it would help the couple know how to take care of each other if someone is to fall sick, and also even planning for the future. And again, they were saying some of these things can be passed down to children. And so if you know certain things to look out for example, if it turns out that in the bloodline there's colon cancer or something like that, then because right from the beginning, once you have children, that's stuff that can be regularly tested for, right? As a way to hopefully, they never catch anything, but in the event that something then presents itself, at least testing would have started earlier on. So just going to leave it there, guys. I'm not a medical professional, but I just found this very interesting to just know about the different tests that are out there. And like I said, this was all sparked by this sickle cell anemia and how some countries actually prohibit certain people from getting married just because of the difficulties that could end up happening for their children. So yeah, that's it for me, you guys. Let me know what your thoughts are. I mean, I will probably put a video. I watched like a YouTube video. I saw some articles. I might pop some links in the description box so that people can read on their own. But yeah, I just wanted to share that. That's it from me today, you guys. Thank you so much for listening. The next episode is going to be on prenups and our thoughts on prenups. And that's going to be me and Oye. And then the next one is going to be episode 100. And that one is going to be on premarital counseling. So be on the lookout for these episodes. I'm really, really excited for them. Thank you so much for listening. I will catch you in the next episode. Peace.